We're talking to the private investigator. We're realizing, oh, this sheriff department did a sloppy job. I mean, the amount of holes within this case is just seriously unforgivable. It's just nuts. How much was just not even put in?
That you're
They
happy
can
with
convince
the
me. That's
result.
the problem. They cannot convince me because I know something's missing. Something's not right. My son did not die in that pond. I think he was put in that pond after he was murdered.
Yeah, I take this very
I
seriously.
just had a
it's-
quick question for you,
Yeah.
Mr. Terry. So you said early in the conversation that some of the points were alarming. What points were alarming in her blurb?
Well, first off, I don't know how they can tell. Well, her blurb said that they removed his organs.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to do that on a drowning case.
Exactly.
Right, so that's number one. That seems odd to me. It makes me feel like they were investigating a homicide at the autopsy, right? And then for some reason, maybe the police got involved and said, oh, well, it's a kid. Here's the problem. It's a 4-year-old in a body of water. The easiest route is to say drowning, and the damage is animal activity, is what they say. Mm-hmm. Oh, a turtle ate
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so that's the quickest route to close a case is because most people, if you say, 4-year-old wandered into a lake and drowned, they go, oh, that sounds plausible. Okay, I'll sign that form. Next case. If there's damage to the child's face, that's very odd, and I'll tell you why. And
exactly.
It wasn't in that autopsy either.
This is hard for me to tell you because it's so graphic and we're talking about your son, but it's my job to solve this for you. It's not my job to be
as clear as possible, please.
The first part of a dead body that is consumed by animals in a body of water is always the genitalia. The genitalia contains the most amount of fermenting gases. And when you pass away and you start to decompose, it excretes this. It's the softest tissue.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see absolute genital mutilation on a body of water and you see damage to the face, that's odd.
Yeah,
that
pretty
bothers
much.
me.
It's very odd. It's very odd.
So those few things that you're catching on to, even though you're not, trained in forensics, that's what blur caught me. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Damage to the, and also most attacks. Here's another thing that's important. There is an exception to what I just said about the genitalia. Mm-hmm. And the exception would be a wound. Okay. So let's say I hit you in the face with a bat and kill you. Your eyeball busts open, your face is bleeding, and then I throw you in the pond. Well, now the turtles and the fish are going to go to the open bleeding wound first because it's secreting these bloods and proteins and not the genital. So the facial wounds make me think it could be kind of disguised injury.
Exactly.
Right? Which would mean there needs to be x-rays of the bones and the facial structures, etc., which I don't know if they were done or not, but they should
Most
have
likely
been
not.
done.
And that's what our main concern is. It's like, do we need to exhume the body? Because it seems like evidence is what they need, and obviously it wasn't put in the autopsy report. So we just want
let me tell you this. If we have to exhume the body, there's no hurry. And the reason I say that is the body is going to be the same today as it is 6 months from now or 8 months from now or a year from now. Once a body's put in the ground, I'm presuming in a casket, and after it's embalmed and everything, it's a very slow process. I mean, I've had a case where I've gone through an exhumation where it was 16 years. And when we cracked that casket open, you could still see a ligature mark on the neck. Mm-hmm. So once that, I'm not in a hurry to do that. And I know it seems like we would want to be in a hurry because of, a body being on the ground.
Yeah.
But that's not how it really works. Once the tissue's embalmed and they're put in a casket, there's no, now the exception to that would be as if the casket failed, which would be like, let's say the whole graveyard flooded and the casket floated up in the water and opened. Well, that's different. But a normal burial is like having it in a test tube. It's going the body, body's going to be fine if we need to do an exhumation.
Okay, that's good to know.
So don't worry about the hurry.
And you find that there are so many holes in this case. Will she be able to sue the police, the sheriff's department, and the medical examiner
and the town?
Yes,
because
So there's two answers to that. The first answer is in the United States, you can sue anybody for anything. That's number one. But your real question is probably, if I sue, what are the chances of being compensated? And I would say it depends on what I find, right?
Okay, that's
if
true.
I find absolute negligence or stuff that's, first year investigative stuff they should have done, then I would say your likelihood is high. If I find one mistake out of 10,000 things they did, then your chances of being compensated are much lower, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me to be honest with you, it depends is the best answer I can give you. But yes, you can legally sue, but what your damages would be and how much you would get and be compensated is dependent upon the findings of the investigation.
And saying the organs are removed because of a smell, that's not normal as well.
Well, every body that passes away smells.
Exactly.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
But pretty much they removed his organ without my consent. It was taken out.
Well, your consent, doesn't matter. It matters morally, but it doesn't matter legally. Okay. For example, if I found a woman shot in the head and I knew it was a homicide, there's nothing you can tell me I can't do to that body. I can, do a full autopsy, remove the organs, inspect everything. I mean, I can do anything I want under law as a cop to investigate a murder. Now, if I have already determined the cause of death as a drowning, then there's no reason to do the rest of that autopsy. You see my point? So the fact that they were doing what's called a full pull autopsy leads me to believe that there was evidence of possible homicide, which is why they did that much.
Yep.
And then they backed out afterwards. That's, again, in your blurb that was concerning to me, which is why I called back.
Of course. Thank you for calling back. Definitely. Gavin wasn't the first child. Like I said, the kid that passed away before him, which that date is in his report, was April 25th.
Right.
So far, 5 kids has died in Jacksonville, supposedly in a pond.
And the previous one, the one from the 425th, had a homicide investigation.
It's still open,
according to the news report.
Right, as it should. Good Lord. So
exactly.
Let me just say, I'll send it to your email tonight, attorney I know, and that's up to you guys to sue and make money.
Yeah. Of course.
So that's the way it should be, because their angle is going to be to put pressure on them to try and get money.
Pretty much.
My angle is going to be to find the truth about your son, possibly get justice, and then if they screwed it up, well, you can go sue them on your own afterwards.
Pretty much. Another question for you. I'm actually running the New York City Marathon on Gavin's name.
That's great.
And I plan to go to make social media to pretty much say what happened to my son. He was murdered. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Well,
or just
I would
question.
Just to raise the question, I want to know what happened to my son. Yeah.
Okay. First off, nobody on social media is going to see your post and call you and tell you who murdered your son.
Of course not.
If you want to run your marathon in your son's name because you're his mother.
There was interview people that said my son had autism. My son did not have autism. I never said he had autism. I don't know where they got the information from.
And in the police
report,
not
for me.
The police report, they lied and said that she told them that her son is autistic, and she has never said that.
Well, that's one of the first things I'm going to get corrected.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because see that little nugget you just told me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example of how I would leverage that. I would meet with the sergeant, say, hey, do you feel like your report's accurate? And they'd say, yeah. I'll say, yeah, I'm a retired cop too, and they'll relax around me, right? I say, okay. I say, you feel like everything's accurate? I say, yeah. Can you tell me the date and time she told you he had autism?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. And I'll say, okay, listen, can you go ahead and correct that one thing? Just go ahead and do a supplement saying, hey, you were mistaken. There was autism. And as soon as they go, okay, yeah, we'll add that correction. That's no harm. As soon as they change that report, they've reopened the case and didn't know it.
Pretty much. And he was verbal. Right? They say he was non-verbal. He was verbal. He spoke. He speak. He asked for what he want. He tell me what he want at all time. And if you go on my page, you hear him speak. He was verbal.
Here's the thing, though. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if he was autistic. It doesn't matter if he couldn't speak at all. What matters is
it didn't come from me.
He passed away. They have an obligation to determine the cause and nature of that beyond any reasonable doubt. Whether he's autistic or not does not lead to his death. That's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. So
it is ridiculous because children, because he love water, therefore he had special needs. I don't understand that.
That's a lot of assumptions. It's a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.